I don't think anybody's going to be rewatching or rewinding the fight. Were the words from David Hay, and I think he spoke some real words of truth there. I'm referring to the fight that just happened between Kubrat Pulev and Hughie Fury. Pulev winning by unanimous scores, rightfully. One of them was 115-113. That was a little too close for my liking. Pulev, especially in his home country, was forcing the fight at times, and Hughie Fury was sagging. He was looking drained. And he got beaten. He didn't put his hands up, well, not until a delayed moment near the end. He knew, ultimately, he'd lost. And I was wrong. I picked Hughie Fury to win. I thought youth and stamina was going to have the last say. But when Hughie Fury got cut, I think, was it either in the second or third round? It was a bad cut, just above the eyelid here, a real gash. I think he slightly panicked, or perhaps he acknowledged the fact he was in Bulgaria. He just started up loading with the right hand, and he seemed to abandon his boxing, which didn't do him any favours. He wasn't jabbing anymore. There was no double jabs. He was just almost in a fatigue state from the third and fourth round on, nestling himself against the ropes in the corners with his left hand low, his right hand cocked, and just trying to hit Pulev with a lottery shot. And this is against a guy who doesn't really have knockout power. In the 8th round, he did manage to land a good shot on the jaw. It didn't really wrap round the mandible, but it clipped him, got the sweat spraying, and it did actually seem to hurt Pulev at that moment. But it was just one moment in the case of like swinging a sledgehammer and it finally hitting the nail. It was an inaccurate shot. It was silly. He'd abandoned his boxing. And Pulev, while he's basic with what he does, it's not that pretty. He mainly just looks at you, high guard, keeps his shoulders up here, jabs away. He was managed ultimately to be effective. He managed to land, and then he was pressing his advantage at times. And if you're doing that in your home country, you're going to be getting the rounds without question. In terms of where Hughie Fury goes from here, it's hard to say. This is his second loss, you could say, at the kind of world level. He'd previously lost against Parker, where he did a lot of nice movement, was very negative. He was negative here again. Showed his inexperience, the fact that when he did get cut, he didn't really know what to do. He seemed to just go, right, I have to knock him out. He wasn't jabbing. And when they managed to show, you could say a lack of intelligence, because when they did manage to stem the flow of the blood, and they showed that the eye wasn't going to close, he just continually tried to wing away with the right hand instead of trying to get his boxing together. With him being 24, with Pulev being 37, I thought surely youth, surely the greater stamina here is going to have a say, but it was a case of a better drilled, more experienced guy who did his basic style of fighting, but he made it work against Hughie, who his posture was sagging, and even though he was the taller man and longer as well, he was allowing himself to be leant on when he came to the clinches. Of course, he was dipping to the right to avoid the decent, you could even say potent, left jab of Pulev. It's his best weapon as a fighter. So Hughie was dipping to the right to get out of the way of it, but then he was allowing himself to get leant on and wrapped on, and that was just further sapping him of his strength. And you had the wry smile of Pulev as he knew, and he looked at the ref, that this was forced work, it was desperate work. This was a guy who didn't have his boxing together, and he just chipped away in his basic way. And despite getting rocked briefly, he was pushing his advantage in the later rounds and deserved to win. The only problem is, I mean, where does he go here? Who's going to want to see a Pulev-Joshua fight? It was previously scheduled to be made. I think Takam stepped in. Now he's older. A big takeaway thing I had from watching that fight, I was just thinking, both of these guys get iced against AJ and Wilder. I don't really care what people say about Wilder, how ugly he looks at times. I was just thinking, he's going to land his right against either one of these guys, and they're both going to be done when he does. So in terms of a threat, it's hard to see how he'd really build up Pulev. Of course, it would still sell in the UK. AJ always sells in the UK. But it's not exactly a mouth-watering prospect. It doesn't really underline the idea of a contender Pulev. He's getting on. You know, I'm not too fussed about that. It's probably going to be AJ Dylan White next as well, if the Wilder fight doesn't happen after whoever wins out of Wilder Fury. So maybe Joshua Pulev takes place later 2019, but this isn't the old days anymore. Champions fight irregularly, maybe when you're like Joshua twice a year. And if one of those fights is going to be Pulev after Dylan White, you know, I'm not that interested. fair play to him. He did what he had to do in his hometown. He was a more measured guy. Again, I was wrong. There was actually, was it a female poster who claimed that I didn't know what I was talking about? I wouldn't quite go that far, but you certainly were right. Hughie Fury didn't seem to have the goods, and possibly doesn't have the goods at the world level. I'm not sure what Petey or his dad's going to tell him now. He's still young, but you know, there was some stamina problems. He needs to learn how to fight on the inside, various things. He abandoned his boxing. Let's say he's definitely going to continue fighting, but it's hard to see where he goes from here. As for Pulev, maybe he will get a shot against Anthony Joshua and give it his best, but congrats for tonight. I certainly don't see him do well against AJ, but well done for a well-deserved unanimous decision.